All right, so the sales rep shows up. They're talking about the $30,000 laser that's going to pay for itself in 6 months. You generate $15,000 in revenue a month. Sounds amazing, right? I just got pitched that, and I almost wrote the check. Right, I had the financing paperwork in front of me for about $35,000 shockwave device, which is helpful. I see the research and the benefits. The numbers looked incredible. And then I did something I don't think the sales rep really wanted me to do or thought I was going to do, but I called 5 practices that I know that actually bought the device from them, and I'm asked them, how's it really going, right? Like, from practice owner to practice owner, how you really doing? And what they told me probably saved me from making a $35,000 mistake. Hi, my name's Dr. Andrew Gurecki, physical therapist, practice owner just like you, and I want to talk today about why expensive equipment rarely delivers the ROI that sales reps promise, and maybe what you should do instead. You might want to consider it. And this is all coming from real world examples, and I'm going to share that with you. So first, let me show you exactly how these sales presentations work, right? So they come in, and whether it's the class 4 red light laser for $25,000 to $50,000, the shockwave therapy units, all are good, beneficial for the patients. Old school would be the Alter G treadmill for 75 grand, the newbie, right? Those eStim devices, those are great as well. But the sales rep shows up with this slick presentation. The technology is revolutionary, and patients are demanding it, and your competitors are using it, and they really make you feel like you're missing out. You're leaving money on the table, right? That's kind of the conversation we just had. But then they show you the math, right? And so even better, let's say you use the device on just 5 patients a day, right? Conservative estimate. You charge $75 a session as a cash add-on, and that's great. And it makes sense. It's very conservative. But if we did 5 patients a day at $75, that's times 20 days. It's about $7,500 a month, right? Should be no brainer. The device cost is $30,000, so that ROI is going to be about 4 months, and then it's all pure profit, and that's what you hear, right? So then they get the closer, right? The big closer statement, right? We've got a special financing offer this month for 0% down and 0% interest, and for the first 12 months, and all this is basically free money is how it's proposed to you, right? But here's the kicker, right? They offer to let you try the demo, which is even that's great, but then your patients love it, which they do because it helps and it feels good and warm and fuzzy, and you see the results for yourself, right? And the demo works great, and patients do like it because the technology works. I totally don't disagree with that. So it's a no-brainer, right? That's how you get sold on. It's a no-brainer, and why wouldn't you do this? And I thought the same thing, right? So let me show you though why the math maybe doesn't work the way that it's presented, right? I think, and again, I think some people do really well with it, but I think a lot of people don't. So, here's what actually happens when you buy that device and you spend $30,000 up front. Number one is you've got a hidden cost, right? There's maintenance that has to happen. A lot of times there's consumables, but it was certainly, annual service. There's probably replacement parts. You got to calibrate your devices. There's sometimes software that goes with this that has to have updates. So you add a couple $1,000s on a year in ongoing costs, right? Then you also see other hidden costs like staff training time, right? Someone needs to know how to learn to use this device, and when are we going to not see patients so I can train you what to do? And so that's going to be a kind of a revenue hit there. But I think there's just things like that we don't necessarily think about that are going to cost. There's going to be some cost there, right? And so then you think about the marketing materials you're going to have to do, and so if your PT makes $90,000 a year, $45 an hour, if it's 8 hours of training that you need to do, that's going to be roughly $360 in productivity that was lost. So now multiply that times every member who's going to be doing this treatment. Also, again, I just mentioned, but the marketing demand, you're going to have to market, right? And so there's a cost to marketing, right? You're going to have to put advertisements on paid social or direct mail. So you got to create a marketing plan. You got to have materials. You got to train your front desk on how to mention it at the appropriate times. So there's a lot to think about, and I think those are hidden costs, right? Those are definitely hidden costs. You got to market to the referring physicians. So there's things to think about there that I think are a little bit more in depth. So one practice owner told me, I spend $2,000 a month on marketing materials and Facebook ads, just to get patients interested, and the ROI just wasn't there. So that's a friend of mine who's got a clinic. Another thing I think that's important to recognize as a hidden cost is there's a utilization rate reality, right? The sales rep says 5 patients a day. That's 100 patients a month. Well, here's what actually happens. Month one, you're excited. You're promoting it. You get 15 patients to talk about it, and maybe they try it, and you make $1,100 or so. Month two, that initial excitement wears off, right? Your staff cares less about it. You maybe made $600, and then the month three, you're busy with other things and you forget to promote it, and now you're down to 300 and you're losing momentum, right? So usually it takes like month 4 to 12, it stabilizes, and you're probably going to get 2 to 3 people a day, maybe. So let's say 3,000 a month, right? Well, that's good, right? But why does that happen? You're losing momentum because not every patient is appropriate for the device. Not every patient wants to pay extra. I think that's something we don't think about. They're already paying for their insurance and their deductibles and their copays. And so staff will forget about it. They're maybe if they're not incentivized. And patients who benefit from it, they'll eventually graduate, right? So now you need new patients and new marketing, and So I talked to a practice that brought in bought a $40,000 Shockwave device, and the rep projected about 12,000 a month. His actual was about 2,800, right? So I think that's an interesting thing to think about. Another hidden cost that I see is the opportunity cost, right? This is a big one nobody talks about. You just spent 30 grand. What else could you have done with that money? Right? Could you have hired a part-time marketing person for 6 months, maybe even a year, to drive new patients in and grow your practice? You could have invested in SEO, in digital marketing, which certainly would have been able to get you some new patients. You could have given your staff bonuses to improve retention. You could have built cash reserves in case something happened. You could have invested in a revenue stream with no upfront costs. That's what we're going to get to in a minute. That $30,000 could have been deployed in ways that generate more reliable, more predictable revenue, right? I think that's the key. So let me show you something that I actually ended up doing. So let me show you the real ROI calculation for that $30,000 a year lasers, right? So device cost is 30 grand, financing and interest, if not paid cash, it's about $1,500. Maintenance contract, let's call it, 2,500. Staff training time is about 500. Marketing to generate the leads is about 1,500. So your total investment's about 36,000, right? So that's realistic. Month 1 to 3, 2,000. Month 4 to 12, 3,500 a month. And so, you're looking at about $31,000 a year in year one. So really your net profit was only $1,500 that first year. That's that's like, what is that? Like a 1% return. So you'd do more putting your money in a high yield savings account, right? So that's definitely a thing to think about, but there's more. What if the utilization is lower than projected? What if it's only 2 patients a day instead of 3? Now you're at, only $2,400 a month. And so you've actually lost money that first year. And year 2 maybe looks a little bit better, but I think the key here is it's the upfront costs. It's the things that you have to spend this money up front to get a return in the future. And I really believe that there's strategies, and I'm going to share one really powerful one with you, that you can generate more revenue per patient without the upfront initial investment, right? So as much as our devices are a very hot thing right now, and I understand cash-based services is important because insurance declining reimbursement is terrible, right? But a lot of times these devices don't even break even, and so you're going to lose. And it's not going to be easy. It takes a lot of effort, and I know this because we've done this. We've played this game before, and we continue to do that, right? We're not giving up, but it's a lot of work. And so another practice owner told me, I talked to recently, he said, we bought a laser for $32,000 3 years ago. The first year we made $18,000 for revenue from it. The second year, $28,000, and the third year, $22,000. And then a new model came out. And so patients started asking, why don't you have the new model like the chiropractor down the street, right? So in this scenario, the total revenue over 3 years was $68,000. And that really only netted about $8,000, right? So we could have made way more money just simply doing nothing, investing in the stock market or whatever, to if it's revenue that we're going on. So I don't want to say equipment purchases are bad. They're not always bad, right? There's situations where it makes a ton of sense. If you have I think it makes sense if you have existing demand. Like if your patients are asking for it, you can see on Google maybe that there's a lot of traffic for that keyword. Your physicians might be specifically requesting it. We've had that. And then so you have some built-in utilization. That's the demand is there, right? You're not having to create that demand from scratch. So I think that's pretty powerful. So if you're a sports medicine practice and you've got athletes that are asking for Normatec compression therapy or cryotherapy, that's real demand. So I think that's a really important thing. I think another really good scenario is if you have high patient volume, like in the right demographic, right? So if you see 100 patients, per day, and 30% of them will be appropriate for this device, they have the cash, they have the means to pay. I think that makes a ton of sense too. So it's not always bad, but I just think that it gets oversold, it gets overhyped. And you have to have realistic math when you're doing these assessments, right? Another one is if you're a true differentiator in your market, meaning nobody else has this device or this technology, I think that's also really important, right? You're the only one offering it within 30-mile radius or something like that. That makes sense to me. You can capture this market that nobody, but often these times, the way that things have gone lately, most people are adding these technologies to their practices, right? So you just got to kind of think about that a little bit. I also think too, if you've got a lot of people that can pay cash, right? If they're willing to do that, great. Not everybody lives in that type of area, and so really thinking through that. And also, if you've got a specific plan, right? So for driving utilization, and it's a plan maybe that's been shown time and time again to work. Maybe you're in a mentor group and you've got people that have an actual plan. I think that is also really helpful, and it can be very positive. Thinking about who's going to be the responsible party for promoting it. What's your script for offering it? How are you going to track utilization weekly? Do you have a marketing plan for awareness? Are you going to tell your therapist to promote it to your patients, to offer a trial to them? And then what are you going to do if you drop below targets, right? So, here's what I wish someone had told me. When I was looking for this $35,000 Shockwave device, I wish somebody would have told me, before you spend the money, that $35,000 on equipment, have you maximized the revenue on what you're already doing, right? Are you maximizing the revenue maximum per patient? And in my practice, something that we were doing already, we were creating home exercise programs for every patient. We weren't getting paid extra for it. We were answering patient questions between visits, like they were at home, they'd call, or we'd see them at the grocery store. We were following up with patients, doing checkup phone calls to see how they're doing. We were, providing support and education, and all these things we weren't getting paid for, but we're delivering value to the patient, right? And that was important to me and my providers. But again, we weren't capturing revenue for it. And it wasn't until I learned that insurance would actually pay for remote monitoring of home exercise programs. It's huge. We've been doing this now for 3 years. It's something we're already doing that it really changed everything, right? It allowed us to, when we implemented remote therapeutic monitoring program, it required zero equipment costs up front, right? We needed an app. There was zero investment. There was no setup fee. We could use our existing patient base. And then now we're adding $40,000 a month in revenue. $40,000 a month in revenue without having to have any upfront costs, right? That's amazing. And so we were able to increase that revenue per patient per month by $160 is currently what we're at. And it was for things that we were already doing. Now, was it hard for the first couple of months to implement and get people kind of used to the idea and therapists to communicate this properly with their patients and inform the patients? Yeah, it took 2 or 3 months to really get in the groove. But $40,000 a month, right? So again, instead of buying new equipment, now I'm getting paid for the value that I'm already providing. Right? That's much more lower risk path to increasing revenue, right? And that is the power of remote therapeutic monitoring. And I can't state it enough. So if you're considering an equipment purchase, a cash-based add-on service, that's awesome. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to go through a few steps here. So step 1, I want you to call 5 practices that you already know that own that device. Ask your sales rep for testimonials, people you can contact, right? And I want you to ask them, what's your actual monthly revenue from it? What's your utilization rate, right? Are there any hidden costs, maintenance, things that surprised you when you implement this? Would you buy it again is a great question. And then the second thing, step two, I want you to run realistic numbers, right? So you're going to cut the sales reps revenue in half. It's a good place to start. Then add 20% for hidden costs. Then calculate that actual ROI, right? And then ask yourself, is this better than other uses of this capital? And then step three, I want you to ask yourself, have you maximized the revenue from what you're already doing? If the answer is no, then start there. That's what we did. We started there. It's low risk and a faster ROI, right? And then step four, I want you to, if you still want to buy that equipment, create a detailed plan, right? Before you purchase it, go through all those things like who's going to be the responsible champion, who's going to track it, what's the marketing plan, what's our budget for the marketing plan, but don't get sucked into these sales pitches, right? With the zero financing seduction. Don't do that. That's not gonna go well for you. So I totally get it, right? The promise of the new technology solving your revenue problems, it's appealing, and I felt it too. And but the practices that are thriving right now aren't the ones with the fanciest technology or equipment, right? It's the ones that they found smart ways to increase revenue without massive capital investment or without burning out their staff, without adding tons of visits to a provider's day. So I put together this free guide for you. It's called the 5 Revenue Strategies PT Owners Are Using in 2026. It includes equipment-based strategies, right? Cash-based services, but also there's 4 other approaches that I've implemented in the last 2 years that have made a huge impact on my practice with zero upfront investment. And I want to share that with you. And so you can download that for free in the link below this video. There's no sales pitch. It's just real numbers, real strategies, me trying to help other practice owners so we can survive and thrive in 2026. Hope you'll subscribe to this. You'll like what we're doing. Hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it, and I'll see you next time.